So this is one that I've thought long and hard about. After almost 2 years of growing my Etsy shop to almost 5,000 sales, I thought if I could take everything that I've learned in my whole journey on Etsy so far over the last 2 years and boil it down to one tip, which is the most useful, most highest ROI tip possible, what would that tip be? And that tip is unquestionably to improve your photography for Etsy. So if your listings aren't getting clicks and they're not converting sales, then this video is going to be for you. So you have to know, right? If your Etsy thumbnail images don't stand out for your listings, then you could be given 100 of the absolute best Etsy tips, okay? But that's not going to matter at all, because if nobody likes your thumbnail images, they don't stand out, then nobody's going to click on your image and nobody's going to go through to your shop. This is why photography is so important. But I also thought to simply just say, improve your photography on Etsy is way too simple, because there's so many different techniques that you can put into place. In reality, there are some very key elements of Etsy photography that do very well, and there's some elements that do terribly. So luckily, I've spent the last 2 years growing my Etsy shop, trying out a whole host of different photography techniques and testing different types of thumbnail images to find what are some of the absolute best and most important practices to put into place for your Etsy photography. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to improve your Etsy photography, to start getting people clicking on your listings and then start getting conversions on those listings. And the best news is that all of it can be done with your smartphone. Right, so now let's take a look at some of the best photography tips that you can start putting into place today to start getting more sales today. Let's have a look at them. Okay, so starting with tip number 1, and this is going to be to consider adding a blurred background on your thumbnail images. So when it comes to trying to make your image stand out and pop out of the picture, then I think the best way to do this is to just slightly blur the background on your product images. So out of all of the different thumbnail image strategies that I've tried over the last 2 years, the blurred background with the image almost popping out of the picture is categorically the best. So look, take these 2 images for example, and just look at how much more the product pops out of image 1 when comparing it to image 2, when in reality the only difference between the 2 images is just the background. So look, when a customer is scrolling through hundreds of different thumbnail images on Etsy and they're trying to buy one product, you have to do everything that you can to try and make your product stand out from the rest. And in my opinion, the blurred background is one of the best ways that you can do this. So this can be very easily done on pretty much any smartphone as well. So all you want to do is open up your camera and head over to the portrait setting. So the portrait feature is ready made with the blurred background. Okay, it couldn't be simpler. It literally couldn't be simpler. All you do is just open the portrait mode, blurred background for you ready, just take a snapshot of your image, done. If you've already got some great images that you already want to use that don't have the blurred background, then there's also a little cheat way that you can do this. So you just want to open up a program called Canva and simply just load the image that you'd like to blur the background on, and then you want to hit edit photo up here and then go to the autofocus under effects. So from here it's really cool because you can blur the background and you can even change the point of focus entirely on the image. So moving on to number 2 now, and this is going to be to hit the Etsy prompts that they literally give you. Now, Etsy are very kind and they've literally given us this tip completely for free. And I mean, when you break it down, so you've really got to consider that what is the sole purpose of Etsy? Etsy's sole purpose is to get buyers onto their platform and to literally just make sales. So in reality, Etsy are going to do all they can to tell you, the seller, exactly what to do to sell your products, because all they want to do is just make more sales to more people. So this is why when you go to create a new product listing and you go to add pictures, they tell you the exact sort of pictures that you need to be putting up to convert your product and to get customers buying. So I'd recommend when you add listings now to still use the old Etsy editor, because when you open up the image editor to add new images to the listing, they've still got the template guides, and all I would do is just upload all of the images and just match each image to exactly what Etsy are asking for. And I think if you do this, you just can't go too wrong. Okay, so moving on to tip number 3 now, and this is going to be to add images of your packaging to your listings. So I think we all know that Etsy is a pretty popular platform when it comes to gift buying. And actually, in fact, a massive proportion of Etsy's traffic is actually made up from people on the platform looking specifically for gifts. So when you consider that, with the findings of this study on Enterprise League stating that a massive 81% of shoppers agree that packaging influences their decision when buying gifts. It would be pretty logical to assume that potential buyers looking for gifts would want to see what the gift packaging looks like before they make the purchase, right? So I would absolutely recommend taking some images of your packaging, especially if you're using gift packaging, and adding them to your listings. I think if you do this, you're going to see a massive spike in your conversion rate. And look, you don't need to play around with any fancy camera settings here. You don't need a fancy camera. Literally, I promise you, just grab your iPhone, take some images of your gift packaging, upload it, especially to any items that you sell as a gift, and you'll be onto a winner. Your conversion rates will definitely increase from this. All right, so moving on to tip number 4 now, and this is going to be to find the style and then get hella consistent with it. So this one does take a little bit of thinking, but there is logic behind it, okay? So once you find a style of imagery that's consistently working for you, I recommend that you stick with this, and you stick with this thoroughly. So this consistent imagery is going to do 2 things. Firstly, it's going to make your job a hell of a lot more easier when you're doing new product shoots, you've got a new product, you know exactly what you need to do, stick it straight in the same background, put the product there, snap your picture the exact same way, and this is going to save you an awful lot of thinking time. And then secondly, but probably most important, it's going to give your customers something what's known as familiarity bias. So essentially, familiarity bias in English is going to be when a customer is searching for a specific product and then hundreds of listings come up for that product, which they're scrolling through. If you've got 10 images that show up on the first 3 or 4 pages, for example, but every single one of those images has the same background and is taken in the same style. So I'm talking about your thumbnail images here. They all show up in the same style. What this is going to do subconsciously to the people that are looking for this product is it's going to give them that familiarity bias. They're going to start to automatically recognize familiar looking images, and then those familiar looking images are going to start to stand out to them more than what all of the different images on the page are going to do. And this is absolute human nature, okay? We're drawn to things that we're comfortable with and things that look familiar to us. So moving on to tip number 5 now, and this is going to be to use props in your imagery. So look, props are an absolutely amazing way to add a new dimension to your images and give your images some aspects that kind of really pop and stand out. But when adding props to images, please, please, please just do not make this mistake. So look, as you can see, this image is just absolutely cluttered as hell. There's things going on all over the place. You can barely focus on the product that's actually being sold, and it just looks terrible. It just looks like an absolute mess. So a massively overcrowded image is one way to absolutely make sure nobody knows what you're selling, nobody's gonna know what the main product is, and they're just gonna be confused and no one's gonna click on your image. It's just gonna look messy as hell. But me personally, I'm actually a massive fan of using props in images. I've actually got a lot of really good success in incorporating things such as like human hands into images and using that human touch as props, which I think gives an added dimension to images which not a lot of your competitors are going to be doing. Unless you're selling something like jewelry maybe, then probably everybody's doing it. And I also don't think there's any harm in taking a look at what some of your competitors are doing in terms of props. And I'm not saying to copy your competitors to the letter and use the exact same props as them, but you can certainly get a little bit of inspiration, right? Okay, so moving on to the last tip now, and this is going to be to just get your framing correct in images. So this is essential, and you actually would not believe the amount of Etsy sellers that I see, even when I'm buying personal gifts, and you see that they've got the main product just hanging out of the frame, or you've got like parts of the product you're trying to buy cut off. Like, it's absolutely crazy. Ideally, you just want the product that you're trying to sell to be front and center of the image with a little bit of space above and below, and then a little bit more space on the sides. And I recommend to try and do all you can to make the product really pop in the center of the image. So like we talked about earlier with the blurred background, I'd also recommend adding an external light source to shine on the product. So again, this is just going to give it an extra dimension and just pull it out from that background of the image. But yeah, just definitely make sure that none of your product is hanging out the edges of the images, because this just looks dreadful. And if you're ever fighting a battle between getting your product too far away or too close to the frame, I'd always lean more towards slightly too close without anything kind of being cut off from the frame, if you know what I mean. Like, you still want your product in the frame, but just closer rather than further away. Because you've got to remember, a lot of people are shopping on smartphones these days, and smartphones when you've got a tiny little thumbnail image on a smartphone, it's kind of hard to see, so you really want the product to pop at the screen. But yeah, in general, I definitely recommend sort your framing out, 100%. But yeah, look, so these were just my top 6 tips on how to improve your photography. But in general, I cannot stress this enough, and I bat on about it in so many videos that I've made about Etsy tips. Your photography is so important to your shops and your listing success. It's the #1 thing, in my opinion, which you just have to get right. But yeah, I mean, if you're not getting the sales you want, and I think you'd probably know that your photography needs improving, or if you were just not getting sales and there was one area that you wanted to focus your time on, please just pick up your phone, do it after this video, listen to the tips I've said. I guarantee it, because I've seen it from first-hand experience, I guarantee that you'll get more shop success if you improve your photography. So I really hope you've got some value from those tips. Like I said, I'm pretty new to the YouTube game, but essentially I just want to give as much value to you guys as possible. And if you like the content and you like what I'm saying and you think some of these tips can prove useful, don't be afraid to subscribe to my channel, because there's going to be plenty more tips coming out on a weekly basis, twice a week. And like, all I want to do is just give back and help you guys skyrocket your sales. And don't forget, I've made all the mistakes so that you don't have to. But yeah, absolutely appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.